Hey, welcome back everyone to this new lecture on SQL for Data Science tutorial, where we are going to discuss the topic of mathematical function in SQL. In this lecture, you will learn different functions that we execute via SQL on our pgadmin tool. So let's get started with today's topic. So I am on my pgadmin tool, and within this lecture, I am going to use this film table, which has these many columns like film ID, title, description. We also have release year, language ID, rental duration, rental rate, length, replacement cost, etc. And mostly I'm going to perform the mathematical functions on these two columns, which are rental rate and replacement cost. So before we get started understanding and performing different kind of functions, I would like to share you a very good resource where you can keep on learning new kind of functions in SQL. So if you go to your Google search and search for mathematical functions in PostgreSQL, you will get this link from this official website of PostgreSQL. And if you visit this page, it has very nice documentation on different kind of mathematical functions and operators. I emphasize you to visit this page and try to explore and experiment with different kind of functions, because within this lecture, we can cover max to max 5 or 6 kind of functions. So in order to have a strong grip, I suggest that you do some practice by yourself. Okay, so let's get started with the topic. As you can see, we have different kind of operators like this plus, minus, multiply, divide, modulo, exponential, etc. The description and example along with the results is given within this site only. And I'll show you how do you pick any function and try to execute by yourself. So let's start with this simple addition operator that takes two column values and adds it into a new value for a different column. So this is how the syntax will look like. So I'm selecting this film ID, title, the first two columns, and for the third column, I'm adding these two columns, which are rental rate and replacement cost. I am adding these two columns to create a new column, which is advance payment. That means by adding this rental rate and replacement cost column, we are trying to create a new column called as advance pay, the amount a customer needs to pay before renting a new movie. So let's select and execute this query. And you can see we have these three columns, film ID, title with no changes. However, there is one more new column which is advance pay, and the values are calculated by adding these rental rate and replacement cost column. Now let's try to explore something else. So we have this square root operator over here that takes in an argument and then calculates the square root for that value. For example, if we are passing 25 to this square root operator, it will give 5 as an output because 5 is the square root for 25. So let's go ahead and try to use this operator in pgadmin. So within this same query only, let's do one thing. I'll try to add one more column by the end of this advance pay, and I'll say calculate the square root for the replacement cost column and creating an alias for this new column as square root advance, or let's call it square root replacement cost. Let's try to execute this. As you can see, by the end we have a new column called as square root replacement cost, and all the values within this column is calculated by applying a square root on the values of the replacement cost column. If you want to see the replacement cost column over here by the end or at the middle of advance pay and the square root column, then you can add that over here. And let's try to execute it one more time, and there you go. So for each of these individual values, we have the square root calculated over here. And now let's come back to our film table again, and let's say that we have given a problem statement this time, that from this replacement cost column, for each and every record or for each and every value, we will have to calculate that how much percentage the customer is paying as a rental rate. Just to summarize the problem statement, how much percentage of the replacement cost a customer needs to pay to rent a movie. So first we will do this. We are trying to divide this value with replacement cost, and if we execute this, we will get a column with the values so many digits after the decimal place. Now let's say I want to round up this value up to 2 digits from the decimal point. So let's go ahead and check the documentation of PostgreSQL if we have such kind of round function, and it should be here. There we go. So we have a round function. Okay, so let's see the example. So like we can see over here, to the round function I'm passing in this value, which is, to be precise, 4 digits after the decimal place, and I'm saying I need to grab only 2 digits after the decimal place, which should be 42.43. And by rounding up this value, the function is giving me this value, which is 42.44, because this value by 4 digits after the decimal place is close to 0.44. So let's go ahead and try to use this function. So first I need to wrap it up within a parenthesis and I'll pass it into the round function. And as an argument, I also need to mention that after the decimal point, how many digits I want. So let's say we want to grab only 2 digits after the decimal place. Alright, so let's select and execute it. Okay, so we have got this value exactly 2 digits after the decimal point after doing this divide calculation. And if we just multiply this by 100, we will get to see that how much percentage a customer needs to pay to rent a movie, that of the replacement cost. So let's execute it and we get to see these values. So depending upon different movies, a customer is paying either 33, 25 or 31% of the total replacement cost. If you want to validate it, you can also show these two tables over here. So let's say I'm displaying rental rate and I'm also displaying this replacement cost as well. So let's execute this query. So as you can understand, this value is almost 33% of this value, and we were able to calculate this thing with the help of mathematical functions in SQL. So I hope you got some idea that how to play around with these mathematical operators and functions in SQL, and it will come very handy if you get to work on an SQL based internship or even if you get a job for an SQL based analyst role. So that's a wrap up. We have seen and understood that how to use different kind of mathematical functions on our pgadmin tool with the help of SQL queries. In the upcoming lectures, we are going to learn about subqueries and views, which are very fundamental topics in SQL. So stick to the playlist and keep on watching the videos in sequence. And I assure you, by the end of this entire tutorial, you will be absolutely interview ready for an SQL based analyst role. See you in the next lecture.